Last week I had COVID. So while I was isolating, I was looking at some of my recorded TV programs, and I watched one called When Barbara Met Alan. Barbara and Alan were disabled cabaret performers who were both angry at the limitations they faced as disabled people. So they became very active campaigners to put things right. And then I read this gospel story which tells us Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman who was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. She'd been like that for 18 years. She's not given a name, she's just the woman that had been crippled for 18 years. Let's give her a name. Let's call her Tabitha. Nobody campaigned for her. Did people avoid Tabitha? Were children cruel? Did the other women talk about her behind her back? Probably the answer is yes to each of these things. She wanted a life. And the TV program, When Barbara Met Alan, that's what these two wanted. They wanted a life. And they recruited others like them to join in militant protests. And it worked, though disabled people still meet obstacles. Barbara and Alan would understand this woman far better than we can. She wanted to be like others, but no one had any cure. In desperation, she came to this synagogue, and when Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you were set free from your ailment." Then Luke tells us about the leader of the synagogue who kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." We've known people like that, those who refuse to give way. It's more than my job's worth. The people who said to Barbara and Alan, "You can't get on the bus in that wheelchair. You'll be a hazard." But Jesus said, "Don't each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, the daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be freed from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" What's interesting is that they both use the word ought. The synagogue steward said the healing ought to be done on another day. Jesus said, "Ought not this woman to be set free, even on the Sabbath day?" The word ought can lead us astray. Refugees ought to stay elsewhere. Homeless people ought to find work. He or she ought to have more sense. It's so easy to use the word to condemn people and to avoid doing anything. But the person condemned here is the synagogue leader. While Jesus knows what really ought to be done, to show compassion to someone in desperate need. This woman's story has a good end. She stood up straight and she began praising God, and the crowd was rejoicing. The story of Barbara and Alan had a good end too. Their militancy helped to produce the Disability Discrimination Act. Among other things, buses have ramps due to their militancy. But there was no miracle to bring that about. It was hard work that met a lot of opposition, and still does when disabled people are seen as an inconvenience. Now, Luke is the only gospel that tells us this story. But Luke does seem to collect stories with Jesus caring for unlikely people, not holding back from them. In this gospel, we can't get away from the challenge to show empathy, to look beyond our own problems, to try to understand the problems of others, and to give them the help they need, not by patronizing, but by supporting and bringing real hope.